Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Veterinary Business Podcast, the place where veterinary leadership meets real-world insight and where we dive deep into stories, strategies, and breakthroughs that transform modern veterinary practices. I'm Don Adisha, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. If you ever walked into a clinic and felt the energy shift, not because of workload, but because your team just looks drained, you're not imagining it. In a profession built on compassion, connection, and purpose, many veterinary teams are quietly running on empty. Productivity might still look fine, but engagement, meaning, fulfillment, those often start slipping long before anyone even says a word. That brings us straight to today's conversation, an honest, timely, and absolutely essential look at why meaning, not motivation, is the real fuel your team has been missing. Joining us is someone who has shaped the veterinary profession from nearly every angle. Dr. Wendy Hauser, a veterinary strategist, practice culture expert, and industry thought leader with more than 30 years of experience. She's the founder of Peak Veterinary Consulting and has served as an associate veterinarian, practice owner and operator, relief veterinarian, pet insurance executive, technical service veterinarian, and a trusted advisor to hospitals and industry partners across North America. Dr. Hauser has held key leadership roles with the AAHA and the AVMA, contributed to National Veterinary Economic Strategy, coach communication at Colorado State University, and published over 100 expert articles, not to mention co-authoring the Veterinarian's Guide to Healthy Pet Plans. Her work spans culture, leadership, operations, and associate development, along with client relations, all grounded in one powerful belief: meaningful work creates thriving teams. So, today's episode, you can motivate empty, meaning is the fuel your team's been missing. Take us into why rewards and recognitions aren't enough, how to spot a team that's producing but not truly engaged, practical ways to reconnect people to purpose after burnout or turnover, and how leaders can build environments where individuals feel not just useful, but genuinely valued. We'll also explore how Peak Veterinary Consulting helps practices rediscover their core purpose and turn it into daily energy, alignment, and action. Before we dive in, here's a special resource for our listeners. You can book a complimentary practice growth strategy session with Lila, an expert marketing strategist who's helped hundreds of veterinary practices grow with confidence. In this one-on-one session, you'll get a detailed review of your clinic's online presence and a personalized 12-month growth plan to help you connect, attract, and thrive. Visit www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com/MSM to schedule your free session. Dr. Hauser, we are honored to have you with us. Welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast. Dr. Hauser, many leaders think motivation is about rewards or recognition, but you talk about meaning as the true driver. How do you define meaning in the context of veterinary work, and why does it matter so much right now?
Don, what a great question to lay the foundation for today's chat. So when you look at teams and you ask them the question and you sift through all the data, you will find that employees state that their work is meaningful when what they do makes a difference to others and when their actions have a positive impact. As a result, they feel part of something that's larger than themselves. Now, when employees are engaged in meaningful work, they report better health, well-being, teamwork, and engagement. They bounce back faster from setbacks, so they're more resilient, and they're more likely to view mistakes as learning opportunities rather than failures. That's so important to reframe for our team's mental health. So in other words, when we think about meaningful work, people at work are more likely to thrive and grow when they experience their job as both meaningful and purposeful. Finding meaning in work results in a sense of purpose. And purpose helps to guide the daily actions of the team members by connecting them to their feelings and their values so that they can act from their heart. Meaningful work and a sense of purpose are the guide that helps to bind team members to the veterinary profession.
So, Dr. Hauser, could you share a specific story from your career, perhaps that illustrates the moment you realized that a paycheck or a thank you wasn't enough to sustain a team?
Yes, I will. Later on in this conversation, I'm going to share a story about motivation and a hard lesson I learned about motivation. I would say that a beautiful way to connect meaningful and purposeful work to the daily actions of team member came with my team member, Katie. Katie found deep meaning and purpose in creating consistency across the practice. And I was probably about halfway through my practice ownership tenure, if you would, at the time that Katie was working with me. And it just became apparent that she had a true passion for this work. Anytime she had a spare moment, she was working on documents such as policies and procedures and guidelines that would help the practice to have consistency, not cookie cutter, but a consistent experience to help to keep everybody on a level playing field. There were no surprises. Everyone did what they needed to do. Patient safety was enhanced. Client satisfaction was increased. And so this was the value that Katie brought to these documents. So I observed this and I said to Katie, would you like to have 4 hours a week that is your protected time? We'll cross you off the floor schedule and you can just work on these documents. And she jumped at the chance. So every Thursday morning from 8 until noon, that was Katie's role. And she had a really interesting process, Dawn. She would look around and she would say, what is going well? What isn't going well? She would talk to the specific stakeholders in that team, be it patient care or client care teams, and ask them that question. She would get their input. She would do research. She would go in and design these documents, go back to the stakeholder teams, get their input, make adjustments if needed, and then they would come to the leadership team for approval and implementation. And the unintended consequence of Katie's actions were that because the team members had a voice in crafting these documents, they had already fully bought in. So by the time the leadership team was ready to implement, the team was on board and ready to execute. So that is what can happen in a clinical sense when leadership aligns a team member's daily actions with what's meaningful and purposeful to them.
Okay. Dr. Hauser, also, how do you differentiate between a meaningful mission and the mission statement that just hangs on the wall?
Well, exactly. The mission statement's static. It's not dynamic. It is maybe a guiding principle, a North Star. But how do you live that mission statement? So that is where, and we won't really talk about this much. Dawn, I could talk to you for hours on this. You can tell I'm pretty passionate about it. It's meaningful to me. But shared values are where you have to bring this in. And I think I will just hit on that briefly, but when you have shared values that you can actually live on a daily basis, and the leadership team emphasizes the need to bring those to life and reinforces opportunities that they see when they've seen their shared values being lived. One of my team's shared values was friendly, and I used to watch it in action every single day. They would greet the clients with huge smiles on their faces. You know, for some of our longer clients, they would come around the corner and hug them. They would help them, if there was an older person, help them with their dogs into the clinic. They would take umbrellas out if it was raining. We do occasionally get rain in Denver, so sometimes we would have some rain. They would carry big bags of dog food out to the car for them. They knew the clients, and if they didn't know them, they made it their mission to get to know them. They were highly relational. This is how they lived friendly, and this was their core value. This isn't something that I, as a leader, said, oh, we're going to be friendly, right? We just inculcated it into the culture.
I see, I see. So, Dr. Hauser, what are some of the signs you've seen that indicate a team is running on empty, where engagement has faded, but productivity might still look fine on the surface?
Yeah, so I think that this is a great question because it can be hard for leaders to know, especially when we're within our own little bubbles trying to provide care to, especially if you're a clinical leader like I was, a doctor owner, trying to provide care to clients and patients. So, what I have found is that this is best observed through workplace behaviors. So, some of the red flags that I would watch for would be employees that seemed unhappy at work, and maybe they acted out that unhappiness through undesirable behaviors, such as gossiping, pot stirring, which is a term that we in the States use for just generally creating and fomenting unrest amongst the rest of the team, talking negatively about work, about their coworkers, about the practice, and sometimes even clients and patients. Other times, and you could see problems, is if you had high performers that all of a sudden just stopped executing on their jobs. They're really just going through the motions to complete the encounter without any investment in the income. And then a third behavior that I watched for as an owner, and I still watch for when I am on site with my consulting clients, is team members that are displaying a below average commitment and performance level. And what they do then is they're putting the time and the effort into meeting the minimum requirements, but they are not going to extend themselves to go above and beyond. So we often call these the lean, don't clean employees. So they're the ones that will lean and talk rather than finding something productive that needs to be done in the practice. So creating engaged employees is critical, not for today's veterinary practices, not just from a healthy workplace culture aspect, but financially. Gallup has identified that disengaged employees have a lower productivity that is the equivalent of 34% of each disengaged employee's salary. 34%. Now, in the United States, across all industries, including healthcare, the latest statistics from Gallup and their engagement surveys is that 7 out of every 10 employees in the US are disengaged. So, this is a huge financial impact on the businesses with disengaged employees. We often talk about workplace shortages. Do we really have workplace shortages, or are we lacking engagement in our team members? I am not talking about making people work harder. I'm talking about designing their work that's meaningful and feeds their souls so that they want to contribute to the workplace. And the statistics from Gallup overlook a really important factor, in my opinion, and that is that they don't take into account the impact on the team when you have an underperforming employee. And what I mean by that is that the team has to pick up the slack. They have to pick up a lot of extra work because their team members are underperforming. And this leads to feelings of not unrest, but dissatisfaction. It can lead to the sentiment of unfairness, that people feel that it's unfair that they have to pick up their slack. And that can lead to unhealthy workplace cultures and burnout.
Okay. Wow. That was really an eye opener right there. Uh, so for practice owners and managers listening in, what are some practical ways they can reconnect their teams to a sense of purpose, especially when burnout and turnover has taken a toll?
So, Don, this is such a big question, and it's an excellent question. I think I'd like to tackle the back half of the question first, because burnout is a very distinctive and separate entity from that can lead to turnover. You know, burnout and turnover are clinical signs of systemic organizational problems. Burnout, defined, is a syndrome that results from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. Stress arises in the workplace from how work is done and not from the employee themselves. So, strategies that are focused on the employee to reduce burnout are unsuccessful. You cannot enroll them in a million different wellness programs and expect burnout to improve because the problem is with how work is being done in the practice. And until changes are made with how it's being done, burnout is going to continue unabated. And so I think that the profession is burned out on hearing about burnout, but they're not doing enough about burnout yet. So one of the ways to understand burnout a little bit better and watch for it within your organization is to think about the 6 primary drivers of burnout across all industries. And they are unsustainable workloads, a lack of perceived control. That's going to factor into meaningful, purposeful work. Insufficient rewards for effort, lack of a supportive community, lack of fairness. There we go. When you have underperforming team members that are energy and productivity vampires, sucking the motivation and the will out of work in their teams, that leads to a huge lack of fairness. And then another one that's hugely important in purpose and meaning is mismatched values and skills. So turnover can be associated with burnout, but it can also be associated with disengagement. And disengagement is a lack of motivation and commitment to work, primarily determined by a lack of positive factors such as autonomy, supervisor support, helpful feedback, and appreciation. Without these factors, employees may feel underappreciated, undervalued, or taken for granted. And that is how you take your really high performers and bottom them out into people that are headed for the door. That is what disengagement can do. So I think that that is the back end of the question. Any thoughts before I actually really address what are some practical ways that can be done that leaders can help to grow purpose and meaning?
Absolutely. I think that distinction is so key to having an understanding, because the reason why I ask, despite you telling me beforehand about the, specific distinct nature of those two, burnout as well as turnover, is the fact that it's consistently, despite you bringing it to attention that it's different, it's consistently brought in together. Oh, because there's burnout, there's turnover, or, because there is turnover, there is burnout to the remaining employees. So really
so many
appreciate you making.
factors. And I would wager to bet that it's disengagement that's driving turnover in most practices, Don, and not so much burnout. There is a problem with how we do work, but a lot of the problem, it could be remedied if we just engaged our employees. So I'm going to give your listeners some tips on that. And I think the first place to start is understanding that purposeful work can temper the effects of burnout, particularly in a lack of perceived control and the mismatched values and skills, kind of like I alluded to. It also drives workplace engagement. Employees want to be known for what makes them special and what makes them unique in the workplace. There are some ways that leaders can help to support meaning and purpose in work. And the first is by helping employees grow and develop new skills and interests. No one wants to be static. And unfortunately, traditionally in private practice veterinary medicine, it is a stagnant career path. And employees hired to do the jobs in the role that they're hired for. And there's no opportunity for advancement and rarely an opportunity to learn new skills and cultivate new interests. So that is a huge problem in driving meaningful, purposeful work. We don't develop our team members. So you had asked me before, Dawn, to share maybe to make this more clinically relevant for the listeners. Well, again, probably about halfway to 3/4 of the way through my practice ownership journey, I recognized that my team members wanted to continue to grow and they needed to continue to grow so that they could thrive. And so I developed a quarterly development program. And the way this worked was at the beginning of every quarter, every team member would identify one personal development goal and one professional development goal. My manager would sit down with them and turn those goals into SMART goals. And then she met with them every 2 weeks, short meetings, literally hey, how are you on track? Let's see your metrics, things going well, any problems you've run into. And by asking those questions every 2 weeks, she could very easily help troubleshoot any unexpected barriers that had come up so that the employee could overcome the obstacle and complete their goal. And the results of completed goals factored into a quarterly performance bonus. Now, this benefited my employees because they knew that leadership cared about them and were invested in their continued growth and development. They felt seen and they felt cared for. And it benefited my practice because I had more engaged employees that were developing new skills that actually improved my practice performance. So that's the first way to do it. So let's help develop skills. Let's create a pathway to do growth. The second way is I've discussed a bit with the story about Katie, and that is to tailor work to what the employee does well. Now, many employees have unanswered callings at work. Those are passions that they can't pursue because of the inflexibility that we artificially create within our practices. We hire for position, and we expect employees to do all the tasks within that role without customizing the job based on what brings meaning to each employee. And when work is tailored to align to the employee's strengths, then they find meaning and purpose in their roles and engagement increases. So consider the story of Alyssa. Alyssa was a surgery technician in one of my consulting clients' hospitals. And she was just amazing. I was so impressed when I saw her in action. Alyssa found deep meaning and purpose in creating the lowest stress surgery day that she could for all stakeholders. So this meant the pet owner, her coworkers, and the veterinarians. So the way that she achieved this was by being very detail oriented. Her drug logs balanced perfectly. Discharge instructions were done hours before the pet was ready to go home. The client had been contacted not just once or twice, but there'd been multiple touch points by Alyssa to let the client know that their beloved pet was doing extremely well. And probably the most unique skill that Alyssa had was that she was able to time anesthetic induction beautifully. And what I mean by that is that when one animal was coming off the surgery or dental table, the next one was already induced and ready to go. And what this did was it improved productivity and efficiency. The days just went so smoothly. And everyone was much less stressed. Now, Dawn, unfortunately, the owner of this practice believed that everybody had to be cross-trained. And I have nothing against cross-training. But not only did he believe they had to be cross-trained, he believed that they had to spend time in every different role that was on the job description. And so Alyssa was forced to be an examination room technician. And this did not align with her strengths. She was never going to be good with it. She was uncomfortable in it. And in part, the reason she was so uncomfortable in it is because she was neurodivergent. So it was physically and emotionally and mentally uncomfortable for her to be in that situation. She became disengaged and she left the practice. He lost an outstanding team member, and he lost it because he did not modify her job role to her strengths. They did surgery 5 days a week. There was no reason that she couldn't have been engaged in surgery for the majority of those 5 days. And no reason that he couldn't respect her limitations and felt the need to try to grow her in weaknesses, which is a failure of us as leaders. Let's concentrate on our employees' strengths, not help to raise them up in places that they will never be strong in.
Right. So, Dr. Hauser, two questions. One is initially you mentioned that somewhere along the line of your own practice owner tenure, as you mentioned, you recognize that your team needs that development, right? So, what was that moment when you recognized it? Why did you recognize it? And then, of course, I would also like to know in Alyssa's case, I mean, cross training usually is a good tactic, right? To get everyone involved and to make everyone understand the different roles at a practice, right? What could he have done better to make that, for him to not lose Alyssa, but also to give her that insight as to what it looks like on the other side of the practice?
I think that she was so strong to answer your second question first, Alyssa.
Yeah.
She was so strong as a technician that she had a lot to contribute to the practice in ways that she could do it comfortably. Now, she, in fairness, never really shared the degree of her neurodivergency. She did not ask for a protected status or anything along those lines. But there were other ways he could have used her. She was great on the phone with clients. We know that phone contact with clients bonds them to the practice. She could have done patient follow-ups. Did she not appreciate being in the exam room? She had to go in the exam room to do surgery admissions, so she had a little taste of it. And along the way, she wasn't a brand new tech. She had been in exam rooms before. And I'm going to challenge the idea of cross-training. Cross-training is great, and I did cross-train as an employer. And I think that probably the best value is when you actually have your patient care team have to be the client care facing team. They may not be the strongest at it, but occasionally we would need someone to go in and fill in as a receptionist, and they would say, that is the hardest job ever. I never want to do it again, right? So there is an appreciation component. But I would say that the benefit is truly to the practice in having people that were trained and could step in if someone was out. And it's not a wrong strategy, but he could have looked for other ways that she could have leveraged her strengths that would have benefited the practice and bonded clients to the practice. And the moment that I recognized that I needed to come up with a better way to engage my employees and help grow them was through my own self-awareness. As I grew my own self-awareness, my top strength is as a learner. And so learning is exceptionally important. And so I think that this was an outcome of, if you're going to go to CE, we want you to come back and bring ideas that you can share to the practice. One pearl for every hour that you attend CE, just one thing to share with your team members and do this presentation. And out of that, then came this awareness that that we really needed to continue to create a learning culture in the practice. What can we do in the practice to help our team members continue to learn? Some of it was an awareness of the lean, don't clean. I mean, I saw that in my own practice, disengaged employees. And I would never say Katie was disengaged, but she certainly had things that she was more engaged in. Interestingly enough, Dawn, cleaning. She loved to clean. So she was never going to be a lean, don't clean person, but maybe there were other things that she wasn't as passionate about.
Got it. Got it. So my next question for you is, Dr. Hauser, is how can leaders create an environment where people don't just feel useful, but truly feel valued? And how does that shift a team's energy and ultimately results?
Well, this is a huge question, Don. So, in my opinion, one of the best ways to help people feel valued is that they feel that leadership cares about them, such as with the quarterly development program. Engagement research by Gallup has found that there are two components that drive the belief that leadership and managers care about employees. And the first, and by far the most important, is a caring manager. Employees want relationships, particularly with managers, that are going to invest in them, help grow them, and help them reach the next level. And the second is ongoing conversations with managers and leadership. And this is going to strike a little fear in the hearts of your listeners, but there's so much great data out there. These ongoing conversations need to happen weekly as a meaningful feedback conversation. They don't have to be long, but they do need to happen weekly to be the most impactful. And when you're having these conversations, there are four basic elements that need to be involved in these conversations. The first is a recognition or appreciation for recent work. And this can be framed in two different ways. How does the recipient want their recognition delivered? Gallup and WorkHuman found that only 10% of employees had ever been asked how they want to receive their recognition. So they're not even being honored in how they want to receive recognition. And then the second way to frame that question is how much recognition is right? Well, only in that same study, only 23% of employees said that the amount of feedback that they got was appropriate for the amount of work that they were doing. So feedback and appreciation. The second component is a focus on collaborations and relationships. And one of the most important roles that a manager has is creating partnerships within the team by matching the right team members together so that they can grow collaboration and develop meaningful relationships. And when this happens, two wonderful things happen. The first is that the employees indicate a higher intention to stay in their role. There's less turnover. And the second thing that happens is that they're much more willing to recommend their employer to future employees. So word of mouth recruitment, both of those are really valuable to our small practices. The third element is understanding an employee's goals and priorities. And the manager needs to ask those. They can lead during these conversations with some basic questions like, what's your focus this week? And how can I help? And then the fourth element to lead with is to lead with meaningful feedback that focuses on an employee's strengths, which is what they do well. To inspire great performance, align job responsibilities with strengths, not asking your team members to do what they're not good at or what they don't enjoy, like Alyssa. So those are four ways that we can begin to show our employees that we care about them and that they're valued.
Dr. Hauser, my immediate follow-up question to you is practice owners and even practice managers might feel like, oh, that's a lot. I have to ask them how they want to be appreciated. I mean, to be fair, that's a really new question to a lot of people. Like,
It's so
how
simple,
are you?
Don. It's so simple, though. Do you know the Gallup research found that if you just hit one of those four pillars, that one of those four will increase engagement about 20%. If you want to increase engagement, ask that simple question. How do you want to be? How do you want to receive your recognition? And this may seem weird, so let me elaborate a little bit. Some employees love to receive their recognition publicly. I had an associate veterinarian that wanted, if I was going to give her recognition or show appreciation, she wanted it in front of the entire team. It truly was tied to her self-worth and validation. And I swear, Dawn, if I could have figured a way to have balloons fall from the ceiling and streamers shoot out of cannons, it would have made it even better for her. That's how public she wanted that recognition. I had another employee that wanted, and I had many that preferred private. One day I was in my office finishing records and I heard a Kiko around the corner making a client callback. And when she hung up the phone, I came around the corner and I said, Akiko, I couldn't help but overhear that conversation. Wow, you were amazing. You were so kind and so compassionate. And I love the humor when you shared with Mrs. Smith the cute little story about what Fluffy did when he was in the hospital. I bet she got a kick out of that. And I can only imagine how great Mrs. Smith felt to know that you cared so much about Fluffy and about her. Well done. Now, that was important for two reasons. The first thing is Akiko had no idea she was doing anything special. She probably did this every single day, and I never heard her do it. And so I was able to give her real-time feedback on something that I thought was truly amazing. And the second thing is I honored how she wanted to receive her praise. She and I were the only ones in the treatment area. Had I done that in front of the team, I am 100% certain Akiko would have melted into a puddle of embarrassment. And so it's a simple question to ask. How do you want to receive it? Do you want it public? Do you want it private? How much recognition do you want? Ideally, you're going to be paying attention. Your manager is going to be talking to leadership and they're going to say, yeah, I observed this. It means you have to have a little bit more awareness and watchfulness. And that's actually a really good thing in practice. I observed her do this. I observed Chris carry that bag of dog food out for Susie. And that was really amazing. Those are behaviors we want to cultivate. And when you can give positive feedback on those behaviors, they do tend to grow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Hauser. What I've loved about our conversation this far is the fact that one of the biggest key issues in the veterinary industry right now is turnover, right? We're looking at, I think I read a data statistic from the AVMA, around 24% of turnover. And that's one of the highest numbers in the healthcare sector right now. And a lot of the conversations are with regards to perhaps more extrinsic motivations, giving bonuses, raises, and all that. But the conversation thus far didn't require a practice owner to spend even a buck extra, right? I mean, granted, but it required them to think a bit differently, change that perspective, care about their employees, their staff members in a level that's different.
Exactly. I have no doubt that every single practice owner feels a deep level of commitment to their employees. They're responsible for their livelihoods and that they care deeply about them. I think a lot of practice owners don't know how to show how they care. And that's why they mistakenly turn to things like extrinsic motivators, because they think that that's important. There has been some research that shows that salary levels are important. But I also do believe transparency and tiered tiers within a role, which will help them, an employee, to continue to grow and develop with transparent salary ranges are important. And I do talk about that quite a bit in when I do other presentations, not usually so much, a little around meaning and purpose, but that's a little bit of a divergency. So I do think that it is the hardest thing to ask. I often say veterinarians are accidental business owners. We got into this because we wanted to help people, we wanted to help pets, or maybe it was both. For me, it was both. My biggest driver is helping people. which is why I enjoy all of the different roles I've had. I can help people, and at a higher level, I can be more impactful and help the pet and the pet owner by supporting their hospitals or their teaching universities or their startup companies or any of the pet insurance, any of the different roles that I've ever played. So I think that it is important that owners continue their own journey. And if they have no interest in this and all they want to do is medical, which is perfectly fine, then they need to hire talented managers and get out of their way. They need to let go of the control issues that almost all of us as veterinarians have, myself included, and let the managers do the jobs they were hired to do.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. You've spent decades helping practices build cultures rooted in meaning and connection. So can you share how you work through peak veterinary consulting and help teams discover, or rather rediscover, that purpose and turn it into everyday engagement?
Yeah. Again, big questions, Don. Big questions. So let's roll back the time clock to 1998 when I became a practice owner. I went into practice ownership reluctantly with the urging and support of my much wiser husband. And I say much wiser because he knows me. And he recognized that I jokingly say I needed to be queen bee. And what I mean by that is that I needed to be able to create the practice that would bring meaning and purpose to my professional life. He recognized it, he supported it, and he pushed me toward it. And I will be forever grateful for him because it has been an amazing, amazing journey. So I had tons of leadership experience and training as a 4-H kid and throughout college. But what I found as an owner is that the skills that I had were not the ones I needed to lead a practice. Remember, this is 1998, a very different time. Leadership in the profession was not being discussed. Business was not being clearly discussed even at that time. A little, but not a lot. We really didn't know anything about workplace culture, psychological safety, motivation, any engagement. I think I'm probably one of the few people currently talking about engagement. I started talking about psychological safety in 2015. So I pride myself on being just a little bit out there on the edge of saying, guys, we need to pay attention to this stuff. And so I made some big mistakes as a practice owner. And the first was that I confused motivation, external motivators, with showing my team how much I cared. Exactly what you just said, Dawn, right? So I gave them free lunches and gift cards, and I thought that that was going to be sufficient. And the outcome was I created an entitled team that worked not out of motivation, not from an intrinsic source. Their work wasn't aligned with what brought purpose to them. That was my bad. Again, a brand new owner. I thought I could buy motivation. And you can't buy motivation. And the reason that you can't buy motivation is because people are already motivated. The question we should be asking is, are they motivated or demotivated? What's the quality of the motivation? And so that was the first thing. What motivates them? And that would be, if I could roll back, do a time turner from Harry Potter, that would be what I would do. The second thing that I share with my clients is the value of a healthy workplace culture. And the concept of creating a healthy workplace culture is overwhelming for many leaders. You know, if they even recognize its value, they don't know where to start. And the reason that they don't know where to start is because workplace culture is the sum of many components. It is not a starting place. So you do have to have meaning in your work. You do have to have purpose. You do have to have shared values. You do have to have organizational identity, and you do have to have organizational purpose. These are the types of things that I help my practices that I work with, be them humane society hospitals, private practice hospitals, and even university-based teaching hospitals. I help them identify all of those things. And the third thing that I wished I had known was the value of employee engagement. And you can say, come on, Wendy, give yourself a break. Really, Gallup has only been doing this employee engagement surveys for a little over 10 years. And, you got out of practice ownership I sold my practice in 2008 and left practice in 2013. So maybe about the time that Gallup was starting to really do their research. But I think that intuitively we could see this happening. So these three concepts are necessary to build successful practices, and where employees have the autonomy to do their best work, the opportunity to grow new skills, and fill their days with meaningful work. And this grows motivated, engaged employees.
Wonderful. Well, with that being said, Dr. Hauser, we have arrived at the end of our podcast. So thank you so much, Dr. Hauser, for sharing your heart, your expertise, and your decades of insights with us today. And you've given us a powerful reminder that motivation isn't something you can force. It's something that grows when people feel connected to their work, their team, and most importantly, their purpose. So, to all our incredible listeners, thank you for spending your time with us. We know how much emotional labor, compassion, and resilience it takes to show up every day in this field. Conversations like this are here to help you refill your cup, reconnect with your purpose, and lead your teams with intention. If today's episode sparked something with you, I encourage you to connect with Dr. Wendy Hauser and explore the consulting and transformational work she does through Peak Veterinary Consulting. Her approach to culture, communication, and purpose-driven leadership continues to help veterinary teams rediscover what makes this profession meaningful. Before we wrap up, another quick reminder, we're offering a complimentary practice growth strategy session with Lila, a trusted expert in veterinary marketing and strategy. In this personalized session, you will be receiving a detailed review of your clinic's online presence and a 12-month growth plan designed to help your practice connect, attract, and thrive. You can book your free session at www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com/MSM. From all of us here at the Veterinary Business Podcast, thank you for showing up for your teams, your clients, and for the animals who depend on you. Keep leading with purpose, with heart, and with meaning. And remember, when your team feels connected to the why, everything else, motivation, engagement, and excellence flows naturally. Until next time, I'm your host, Dan Disha. Take care.